Good afternoon, welcome to my channel. My name is David Okun. I've been talking about the cost of living for the last 10 months within different contexts. This time we are talking about Uganda, and this is the fifth video from the first talking about Uganda in terms of the cost of living. I have said elsewhere and in this video as well that the cost of living is caused by poverty. Wherever it exists, whether in Europe, Africa, whichever continent, because it's a global crisis, it's caused by poverty. The majority of the population working for a living are experiencing poverty. They have always experienced poverty. And if you work for a living, you are actually poor in the sense that you have to borrow money to supplement your income or just go without one thing or another. Even if you are getting decent pay, it goes up in taxes, it goes up in other taxes, including food, energy, housing, transportation, and many other things. Healthcare. What you educate your children, buy school uniform, especially in Africa, but also in the developed world, it's the same, but worse in Africa and Uganda. And we looked also in Uganda in particular, problem surrounding corruption in Uganda and other factors in Uganda. Being part of Africa, the origin of all the problem is capitalism, which is extreme, which if not actually moderated by government by providing public service, by strengthening the public sector. Again, people cannot get out of poverty, and once they cannot get out of poverty, they are going to remain poor, and that causes the cost of living crisis, which is occurring globally in Uganda, also in Africa inclusive. So let us look at industry today and continuing with the discourse. Thank you for everyone, to everyone who have been helping me grow this channel, people who have been watching, subscribing to the channel, subscribing if you haven't subscribed, support the channel and leave a comment below. Click the notification bell so that you don't miss out on whatever we are doing. Watch the other video in conjunction with the rest of the videos, because they are all connected. If looking at industry in Uganda, Uganda ranked as number 102 among the countries of the world in nominal gross domestic product by the International Monetary Fund, with a GDP of 26,349 in US million. Now, the IMF and the World Bank are funding Africa, including Uganda. But normally, the public sector in Uganda is reported as being one of the most corrupt in the world. And that in the face of the current government under President Museveni having stayed in power for more than 30 years now, approaching 40 years, and practicing a military dictatorship, but for one reason or another being supported by the West. The West are teaching the world about democracy, but when you come to Africa, and the way the Western world behave, is as if Africa deserves less. And argue with that, the source of violence and tension and poverty, which is a part of violence, the cost of living being an example of violence. This is caused by cultural failure. When we fail to value humanity, we are a people of the world. I have been repeating this point over and over. I will be repeating it going forward whenever I'm talking about general issues to do with the world, peace and global relations. Because we're talking about globalization, Uganda is part of it, East Africa is part of it, Africa is part of it, and we're becoming a global community. We are looking at technology, which is actually taking over employment. We are looking at a system of capitalism which is unable to provide full employment for people, so the state needs to intervene in the public sector. But the problem is the public sector is being closed down even in Africa, but also in the developed world, in the West, and in the rest of the world, developed world. So that's why the cost of living, the cost of living as a crisis. Fundamentally, that is what is causing the cost of living. The solution is to involve the government intervening to strengthen the public sector, to provide public service, including welfare support, including employment support and other healthcare support, housing, eradicate homelessness. Houses should be built in Uganda. Houses should be built across the world to provide housing to people who cannot afford to buy. And over 90% of the world population, wherever they are able to afford housing in terms of housing, the modern sense of the word, housing in the modern sense of the word. And we need to change this if we want peace. And if there is no peace, we are not going to be happy, but more than not being happy, we are going to go extinct. So the World Bank ranked Uganda is number 99 in nominal GDP, with a GDP of 25,891 US dollars in millions, based on the GDP with purchasing power parity. The IMF ranked Uganda as number 86, and that is 91.212 million of parents in dollar. And the World Bank ranks them 90 in the world, with 79,889 million of current international US dollar value. So since the 1990s, the economy in Uganda is growing. Real gross domestic product GDP grew at an average of 6.7% annually during the period between 1990 and 2015. Whereas real GDP per capita grew at 3.3% per annum during the same period. Let's look specifically at poverty in Uganda. Uganda is one of the poorest nations in the world. We saw that in the other videos, so I won't be repeating them so much here. Despite making enormous progress in reducing the countrywide poverty incidence from 56% of the population in 1992 to 24%, 5.5% in 2009, poverty remains deep-rooted in the country's rural areas, which are home to 84% of Uganda. The problem with the way the authorities measure poverty is wrong, because at any time somebody is working for a living, he is poor, he or she is poor. So let's take the statistic from the top of my head to more than 90%. And that is a problem globally. The way statistics are done is actually dishonest or ignorant. Make your pick. Because if you work for a living, you're poor by default. Because that is the nature of capitalism. You have to work for a living, you're a poor person. You can't afford housing, you can't afford anything. And you have to borrow money. That's why there's a cost of living. The cost of living is proof of poverty among the working class, which is actually the lower, the middle, and maybe we talk with the upper, but there's no need. The lower and the middle classes are actually poor. The upper classes who are multimillionaires in US dollar are actually the rich ones. If the total population is actually 90% multimillionaires, then the statistic would be the other way around. That the minority are actually poor. If you're not a millionaires or billionaires, you're poor. Simple as that. And the mathematics shouldn't be too complicated. The people in rural areas of Uganda depend on farming as the main source of income, and 90% of all rural women work in the agricultural sector. In addition to agricultural work, rural women are responsible for the caretaking of their families. This is a situation throughout Africa. Uganda is featured. The average Ugandan woman spends 9 hours a day on domestic tasks such as preparing food and clothing, fetching water and firewood, and caring for elderly, sick, as well as orphans. These are domestic work which are actually industrial, which are not paid. Therefore, this is actually the impoverishing of not only the women but also the family and children. This deed under the current condition should change. Women working from home should be paid some welfare support in terms of money and equivalent of being paid for work. We need to do homework, because you see the economy has changed. We need money to get out of poverty. So every work, whether it is domestic or industrial outside the home should be actually subject to government payment. And the IMF and the World Bank should change their policy to focus more in Africa, in Uganda, on the revenue side of funding island capital and infrastructure. This is a major issue, the actual cause of the cost of living crisis. It is actually a failure of the systemic failure, because the people working there are actually not well educated in terms of culture. Nonetheless, because of their heavy workload, they are little time for these income generating activities. The poor cannot support their children at school, and in most cases, girls drop out of school to help out in domestic work or to get married. The girls engage in sex work. As a result, young women tend to have older and more sexually experienced partners, and this puts women at disproportionate risk of getting affected by HIV, accounting for about 5.7% of all adults living with HIV in Uganda. Maternal health in rural Uganda lags behind national policy targets and the Millennium Development Goals, with geographical inaccessibility, lack of transport, and financial burdens identified as key demand side constraints to accessing maternal health services. As such, interventions like intermediate transport mechanisms are being adopted as means to improve women's access to maternal health care services in rural region of the country. The major problem is privatization of public service across the globe, in Africa and in Uganda. The fundamental reform mechanism, policy and mechanism should be renationalizing the public sector to provide private sector like hospital ambulance system, maternal care facilities, and education, children care at home or in school or wherever. I mean, if parents of children are intending to work, they should have that option that can also be provided under the management of the public sector, which is actually a reform intended normally within a peaceful network to mitigate on the extremity of capitalism. And women are subjected to an overall lower social status than men. Many women believe this reduces their power to act independently, participate in community life, become educated, and escape reliance upon businessmen. This is the cultural failure, because if there is violence, the family is divided. If we don't value humanity, then we don't value our partners. Men don't value women, women don't value men, children are actually abused, they are not valued. Our value system are being altered. We have failed culturally as a global citizenship, and in Uganda that's no exception. It's the same everywhere because of globalization and because of capitalism. This failure of family relationships and social relationships are being exacerbated by capitalism, where individualism is emphasized for purposes of making money. People tend to think more about money than people, and this has to change because this is a cultural failure. Then look at Entebbe and the transportation and Entebbe International Airport. There are 35 airports in Uganda. The commercial airlines operate scheduled passenger services out of 4 airports in the country. Uganda currently has one functioning international airport, Entebbe International Airport, which is located 25 miles 40 kilometers southwest of Kampala. In 2017, the airport traffic hit 1.53 million passengers, 8% more than the previous year. The second international airport, Hoima International Airport, is currently under construction. So look at the road network. In my opinion, if you have to be careful, I think significant part of the air travel needs to be treated as part of public transport, and therefore nationalized to cater for people who may otherwise not afford to travel. And in a modern world, air travel is supposed to be treated as an essential because people work globally. People who want to travel maybe into the Middle East, like if you are in Uganda, East Africa, in Africa, Middle East, and the developed world, maybe in other parts of the world to work and to study, they can barely afford air transportation, and this is not right. This is actually a factor also contributing to the poverty, and also the cost of living crisis. And my purpose is actually to link these things so that it is clarified. People become to understand the situation surrounding them, and they can plan accordingly and then take the necessary action as a community or as a government, as a country, to try and resolve to achieve the needed result. And these actually affect all the aspects of society in the developmental front. But essentially, we need to pay more attention culturally so that we begin to change the way we run society. And let us look at road network in Uganda. We look at big infrastructures like roads leading to the Matishan Fall. Road transportation is the most important way of transportation in Uganda. 95% of freight and passenger traffic is handled by road traffic. And the road network in Uganda is approximately 129,469 kilometers, 8,448 million long. About 4% of these roads are paved, which equates to only about 5,300 kilometers, 3,300 miles of paved roads. The different type of roads are national roads, 22,009 kilometers, 13,679 26 miles, 17% district roads, 43,661 kilometers, 20,916 miles, 26% urban roads, 9,062 kilometers, 631 miles, 7%, and the community roads 64,734 kilometers, 40,234 miles, 50%. When you talk about country roads, there are no roads at all. These are actually a very terrible indictment on a government which has overstayed in power in the first instance, practicing military dictatorship and actually wreaking havoc. The corruption, the president of Uganda is worth over 13 billion US dollar. I mean, if you ask him where he got the money from, the answer is on the record. As the president is saying he sold milk because he's price of Nyankole cattle keepers, and most of Ugandan cattle keepers anyway. The practice makes agriculture, especially in northern Uganda. In northern Uganda, cattle keepers also, so corruption is a dangerous disease in Uganda. So the national roads make up about 70% of the road network, but carry over 80% of the total road traffic. In Uganda, there are 83,000 private cars, which means 2.94 cars per 1,000 inhabitants. Let's look at railroad. The rail network in Uganda is approximately 1,260 kilometers, 708 miles long. I think the condition of railway in Uganda is probably can be described as resembling, Stone Age period. And I know there are probably plans to upgrade the road, the air transportation system, but corruption is the worst thing in Uganda. Even the official statistics or the independent studies are actually understating the problem. The longest lines are the main line from Kampala to Tororo, 259 kilometers, 155 miles. The western line from Kampala to Kasese, 333 kilometers, 207 miles, The northern line from Tororo to Pakwach, 641 kilometers and 398 miles. Look at communications in Uganda and statistics from around January 2015. There are 17 telecommunication companies serving over 21 million subscribers in a population of over 34 million. Now, in my opinion, also, I think in Uganda, in particular, also in Africa, because communication and transportation are now essentials, basic essentials. I think the large percentage of transportation should be privatized and subsidized by the government so that people can afford it. The issue of Africa is on poverty and the cost of living prices about affordability. So subsidy, government subsidy, with the support of the IMF and the World Bank, the rest of the world helping Africa. These would actually get people out of poverty within 5 years or 10 years. And as of now, things can only get worse because of privatization, because of the closure of the public sector. There are 7 international, more than 95% of internet connections are made using mobile phones. The total mobile and fixed telephony subscribers increased from over 20 million to over 21 million, yielding an increment of over 1.1 million. Subscribers are 5.4 increase compared to the 1.1% increase realized in the previous quarter, Q4 2024, October to December. There are actually information you can look at and do a study. Just look at energy. In Uganda is richly endowed with abundant energy resources which are fairly distributed throughout the country. These include hydropower, biomass, solar, geothermal, peat, and fossil fuels. Energy poverty and food poverty and the rest of the poverty actually is caused by capitalism for the many. The 90% of population are also energy poor, food poor, and this has to change by changing the way economies are run. Under capitalism, we need more, not less, public sector. In the 1980s, the majority of energy in Uganda came from charcoal and wood. However, oil was found in the Lake Albert area, totaling an estimated 95% cubic meters. 3.4 times 10 cubic feet barrels of crude. Heritage Oil discovered one of the largest crude oil finds in Uganda and continues operations there. Uganda and Tanzania signed a deal on the 13th September 2016 that will see the two countries build a 1,445 kilometer, $3.5 billion crude oil pipeline. The Uganda-Tanzania crude oil pipeline, UTCOP, also known as the East African Crude Oil Pipeline, EACOP, will be the first of its kind in East Africa. Will connect Uganda's oil-rich Hoima region with the Indian Ocean through the Tanga port in Tanzania. Uganda's favorable enabling environment and broad presence or private sector investment presence present a unique opportunity to deliver on far African goals. The private sector can invest in energy and power systems, but like I said, the issue will always with the private sector remain to be poverty, affordability, or lack thereof. And in my mind, I think this is the duty of government using the public sector and the private and the public service to provide energy, including actually in the UK, Europe, America, and the developed world. Same problem because these are essentials. Food, energy, healthcare, education should always be in the hand of the government, the public sector. Private sector are not designed to do provide these things. The private sector only want money. They only create wealth for themselves. And that's why only 10 or 15% of the population today are actually multimillionaires and multimillionaires because they are in it for themselves. The culture is rotten. And what we need with this society, social issues, to revisit culture generally, for whether you're rich or poor, is a national emergency situation because of violence arising mainly from cultural failure. Because if we don't get our culture right, to value humanity, to bring peace, every development, every progress we make is going to be weaponized to destroy humanity. We are going to be a very dangerous society. The more wealth and power we acquire, we turn this automatically into weaponization and warfare. And this is all because of failure, cultural failure. It is a good thing to create wealth, grow the economy, or the energy or food, or other infrastructure or utility. We need our culture back by focusing on valuing humanity as a priority in what I call the cultural economy or global cultural economy. And Uganda is one of the few sub-Saharan African countries to have liberalized and financially viable energy market with generation, transmission, supply segments and bundles since 2001. Liberalization has been a major problem for the poor people. It has been a major benefit to few 10 or 15% of the global population in Uganda. You feel like President Museveni, who, if you look on the internet, you will find that Museveni is worth over 13 billion US dollars, and his wife is worth over $0.7 billion. The first family are actually multi-billionaires in US dollar. These are the few, and they are associated in Uganda across the globe. These are actually communion of the few benefiting from capitalism and excluding the rest of the population in Uganda, Africa, and the globe. This should change because this is a form of violence. Violence is anti-peace. If we don't bring peace, sooner or later humanity will go extinct, beginning from countries like Uganda, continents like Africa, but also globally. I say this before, I say it again, now and going forward. Uganda is there is an independent regulatory authority that undertakes sector regulation and oversight. Regulation in Uganda is irrelevant given the level of corruption, and they regulate the wind. And the private sectors they do what they like. There is something called load shedding, which means people remain in darkness 24/7. Including in hospitals, people actually, I think people also die in the hospital because the light just goes out in Uganda. It's very common. Or maybe the largest distribution company, or maybe private owned and has for 20 years concession for distribution and retail. This is a complete disaster in Uganda because of load shedding. If you go to Uganda, people just accept it because there's nothing they can do. The government will not listen to people because they are dangerous military dictatorship. You cannot speak to leaders in Africa. Some of the most dangerous dictators in the world actually exist in Africa, and also in Uganda, being in Africa. The dictatorship is militaristic and extremely effective in destroying any dissenting voices. I mean, if you question anything the government is doing, you are crushed and destroyed without even any mercy. And the West are actually behind supporting dictatorship in Africa because they themselves in Europe and America and the rest of the developed world are also practicing dictatorship, civil dictatorship disguised as democracy. Because if there is the cost of living crisis, then there is a dictatorship, there is a war, there is violence, there is nastiness. That there is no peace for the wicked. Whenever these things are happening, we need peace. It's not the survival strategy for humanity. We need peace today. We need to learn our culture. We need to learn respect for people. 95% of people be got out of poverty immediately. For there to be a prospect of peace going forward. And this can only be done by a bigger, not less, public sector and public service. See this again and again. Independent power producers (IPPs) currently account for nearly 6% of generation capacity. Issues with integrated planning and financial ecosystem persist. Let us look at water supply and sanitation in Uganda. According to a 2006 published report, Uganda water supply and sanitation sector has made substantial progress in urban areas since the mid-1990s, with substantial increases in coverage as well as in operational and commercial performance. Sector reforms in the region in the period 1998 and 2003 included the commercialization and modernization of the national water sewerages corporation operating in cities and larger towns, and as well as a decentralization and private sector participation in small towns. Now, modernization can be done within the public sector. When we talk about reform normally means privatizing the public sector and selling it off to the super rich private owners. These private owners have only one thing on their minds globally, including in Uganda: make money and more. They are like pigs. They don't get enough. They are so greedy and really dangerous people. They are culturally totally uneducated, and they are ticking time bombs in Uganda, Africa, and across the globe. And the culture needs to be cut. Otherwise, humanity faces extinction because of violence and cost of living crisis. Feature actually a sign is evidence of risk we face in humanity. Although this reform have attracted significant international attention, 38% of the population still had no access to an improved water source in 2010. That is even an understatement, because access is one thing, but also sustainability is another thing. And some of these statistics are actually fake, because you see, if you work for living in Uganda, you can't afford to access clean water. The moment water is privatized, because the purpose of public sector is to reduce the price, is to intervene so that the price of water is affordable. Water is life, air is life, energy is life, food is life. It is wickedness, it's full wickedness to privatize its utilities. Capitalism now has become the instrument of destruction, of annihilation, of theft, of violence, of moral stories, and it needs to change, because we need to learn our culture, come back to our senses, and become living peacefully. The world is enough, it's enough wealth. There is no need to hoard wealth or even to concentrate wealth in the hands of the few and exclude the over 90% from the wealth of the world. They are going to die, people are going to die, 90%, over 90% of the population, including in Uganda, are going to go extinct. And because of violence, humanity will go extinct totally, including the weak. No rest for the wicked. So concerning access to improve sanitation, figures are very wide. According to current figure, it was 70% in rural areas and 81% in urban areas in 2011. According to UN figures, it was more less than 4%. I'll go with the UN figures, because you see, when you talk about we talk about sanitation, because sanitation in Africa, the idea is really cool. People go, you use paper train. The population in town, if you're poor, you can't afford sanitated system. Period. The compound, you don't even talk about putting the sanitation system, the sewerage in your compound. Sometimes you have to people use septic tank if they want to build homes with toilets. But the government infrastructure has failed. Money are stolen, that is bad enough, but also government is using for private sector, which is actually stealing the money. I use the word stealing because these are actually public money to provide private sector. That's what I'm talking about. According to the government figures, let us talk about the water and sanitation sector, which was actually recognized, which actually was recognized as the key area under the poverty eradication action plan PEP, Uganda's main strategy paper to fight poverty. According to a 2007 published report, a comprehensive expenditure framework being introduced to coordinate financial support by external donors, the national government, the non-governmental organization. PEP estimated that from 2001 to 2015, about US 1.4 billion or US dollar, $92 million per year, was actually needed to increase water supply coverage up to 90% with rural areas needing US $96 million, urban areas in large towns needing 281 million US dollar, and the small town needing $136 million. Now, when we talk about water supply, people are actually having to pay for water, which is wrong. People having to pay for food in Africa is wrong, because supermarkets should be built by public money provided by Europe, the IMF, and the World Bank in the West, and the rest of the developed world should supply money to Africa for the African government to provide free food and free water and free sanitation services to everyone who works and live in the 90% of the population in Africa, access free housing, the free healthcare, free education, free transportation, including a subsidized air transportation. This is not happening. This is the form of violence, because a lot of these things in the modern world are becoming necessary, especially in the transportation sector. Access to hotels, restaurants. These are actually, people may not be able to cook because they're at work. There should be restaurants support a small and medium business in restaurant industry. Should be supported, subsidized, should be supported by the government, so that they can control pricing for people to access food in restaurants. And if they are drinking, then this also should be subsidized. I'm not sure about smoking, but smoking can be taxed. They want to tax it. VAT should be abolished in Africa, because it only impoverish poor people the more, and this is a form of violence, the form of cultural failure, is subjugatory. In the modern world, this is a sign that we are heading the wrong way, and the wrong way is actually the route to extermination of humanity, beginning with the poor and also the rich, because there is no peace. Like I said previously, I say it again, and let us be careful what we do. Let us revisit our culture and begin solving the problem of poverty. I try to iron my shirt, but because of the way it's made in Africa, and I need to iron from the inside. I cannot iron from outside, so I don't know how to do it, because sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't, because the way it's made. I think it's made of wax from the outside, so I have to iron from the inside. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If you comment below what you think about my shirt and also about this program. Thank you for watching. If you've been watching up to this time, subscribe to my channel and support this project. We're excited. We're looking at Uganda. We're going to continue looking at education in Uganda. Uganda's educational system, while lacking in many areas, has been a significant change. I've seen significant change since the late 1980s. See, every time we talk of change, we are merely talking about the system being privatized from national to private system. And it's supposed to be good with technology. It works well. It's supposed to be working well, but how are you going to deal with corruption? How are you going to deal with inaccessibility if people cannot access the service? That's not how good it is. If there are so many poor people in a country like Uganda, and the unemployment is not even measurable, because almost everybody is employed unless they're employed by the NGOs or some part of the public sector. And when we talk about the private sector employing people, it's really almost invisible. The educational system is set up so that children spend 7 years in private school, 6 years in secondary school, and 3 to 5 years in post-secondary school. in 1997, the government declared that primary schools will be free for children. This amendment has huge benefit. Now, in fact, government has put that policy, but it's fake. It's actually a very dangerous policy because it misleads the parents and the government. It misleads the world that there are the free universal education in Uganda. There is not. Uganda government declared free education, but he stopped financing schools, so the parents are now the ones running schools. There's something called PTA, Parent Teachers Association. This education is now costing probably 1,000 times before there was a declaration of free education. So that is a false economy. It's a really, really rude. The government really shade up to the world to say there is free education, universal education. No, there is not. If the government wants to be there, parents should not pay extra to run school. And teachers stay for 6 months without pay. And they have to really, parents have to really contribute to look after teachers. I mean, they can't access housing. They can't access clothing. I mean, if a teacher cannot access a shop to wash his clothes, what kind of country do you call Uganda? Government should take over running over the government school, and it should fund it 100%. And in addition to uniform, in addition to non-payment of school fees, parents should pay nothing. In Africa, in Uganda, they should pay zero. The government should pay everything. They should look for money from the West, which actually control African government. So African governments are an extension of the Western powers, capitalism. So we don't care what it is, as long as we are looked after and we are not abused by trickery and really, these are the insights to say there is free education in Uganda. In 1997, the government declared that primary schools should be free for all children. This is not the case. This amendment used benefit. That's the imagination, the fiction is the imagination. The government are actually suffering. Children are actually suffering in secondary school, especially. Children go to secondary school in Africa, in Uganda, without actually proper clothing, without uniform. They can't afford uniform. They don't even have beds. They have to carry beds from Uganda, from home. There is no bed in school. There is no dormitory. It's so dirty. It looks like a prison. This is a very tragic survey on public education in Uganda. And this needs to be changed immediately. It's really a form of a tragic abuse, and especially the government of the NRM government in Uganda have been doing now for 40 years. Such a tragic insult to the intelligence of Uganda, and the Uganda should avoid abusing the people of Uganda, and the Western powers and the Eastern powers, the development, stop abusing Africans, especially Uganda. In 1996, only 2 million children were attending primary school. Why? By 1999, 6 million children were attending primary school, and this number has continued to rise. But they are not being taught. Teachers are not being paid. Following significant gains in access to primary education since 1997, when universal primary education UPE was used, Uganda in 1997 became the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to use universal secondary education. The small step by the government of Uganda led to an increase in lower secondary enrollment by nearly 25% between 2007 and 2012. Students in Uganda at the 2002 census, Uganda had a literacy rate of 66.8%, 76.8% male, and 77.7% female. Public spending on education was at 5.3% of the 2002-2005. Most education in Uganda are provided private. There are more for everyone public public schools. There are probably 1,000 private schools, which now, if you have money, parents have to really work overtime to struggle. See, when these statistics are portrayed, the government cannot take credit for it because these are private companies that parents have to turn into slaves in order to put their children to school. Because the government do not even give uniform. The government do not even provide food. The government do not even provide toiletry system. There is no water in school. And there is no public transport for children in school. Uganda is in the strong age. Africa is similar. And because of privatization, even in the face of modern day wealth, this has really gone terribly worse. Far was like a jungle. Children pass to go to universities, but they cannot because they don't have afford school fees. And this should be changing. Uganda should actually introduce universal education from nursery to secondary school under the public sector management, so that poor people do not have to work like slaves. Some mothers have to sell themselves to take children to school. This is an abomination. It's really wrong. Capitalism is rotten infrastructure in Uganda and in Africa. And this is an offense arising from Europe and America and the developed world. This is actually a desperate something on barbarism, which is capitalism, which is actually the people running it being ignorant about culture, not valuing humanity, treating humans worse than animals. In the 2002 census, public spending on education was 92% of the 2002 and 2005 GDP. These are all stolen by the thieves. So that's why teachers don't get paid and students don't even have food or drinking water in school. As of 2020, the NCHE website listed 46 private accredited universities. To mention a few: Makerere University, Mbara, University of Science and Technology, Kiambogo University, Uli University, Uganda Christian University, Kampala International University, among many more. So when we talk about listed 46 private accredited universities, this is really a tragic survey because to even argue with that, these schools have been privatized from behind the back of the door. Look at health, HIV, look at HIV/AIDS incident. There were 8 physicians per 100,000 persons in the early 2000s. Uganda eliminated the elimination of user fees of state health facilities in 2001 has resulted in an 80% increase in visits, with over half of this increase coming from the poorest 20% of the population. The real story outside statistics, the real story of healthcare in Uganda, all the public health services now in Uganda. If you don't have money, you're not going to get treatment in Uganda at all. You're going to die. As when we sit here now, you can only get paid when you bribe the doctor, when you bribe the nurse, then you get examined. If you bribe some more, then you get what you get. You get medication. You have to pay by bribe, by theft. That is the rottenness of the health system in Uganda. It's a ticking time bomb. You can literally die. People are dying of malaria all the time because they can't afford healthcare. So these statistics are actually taken from corruption. It is a corrupt way of representing the state of education and health in Uganda. These policy has been cited as key factor in helping Uganda achieve its millennium development goals and example importance of equity achieving those goals. This is not right. It's not true because there are actually private healthcare. The government is not supposed to take credit, except for privatizing the system, except for excluding the majority of the population in Uganda who are actually suffering, some of whom are now resorting to traditional medicine system or going to witch doctors because they can't afford healthcare. Same with education, they can't afford education. You see, these things are there that they are ghost down. If you see the inflation, every money collected by the NGO or even foreign funding is focusing on infrastructure. If you go and see some of these modern hospitals, they look like hotels other than hospitals, but they are empty. Across Africa, not just in Uganda, they are empty shells. They look like restaurants or expensive hotels, 5-star hotels, but they're there as ghost cities, as ghost facilities. People do not appreciate it. The statistics actually is either ignorant or total lie. Misrepresentation of the success business actually failure. And it's no wonder there's a serious cost of living crisis across the globe. Despite this policy, many users are denied care if they do not provide their own medical equipment. It happened in the highly publicized case of Jennifer. This is actually the norm. And if you want to get clear statistics, speak to ordinary people who are actually facing poverty in Uganda, then they will tell you the primary, raw facts and forget, these papers or these reports. These type of reports are actually heavily edited to, because they are also coming from Uganda. They are probably financed by the government, so they are they give a clear an idea, but you have to really take the information with a pinch of salt. Poor communication with the hospital, low satisfaction with health services, and distance to services provided undermine the provision of quality health care to people living in Uganda, and particularly for those in poor and heavily-headed households. So it's a contradiction in terms. That's what I was talking about. The report itself contradicts itself. Because the poor provision of subsidies, poor and rural population, along with the extension of public-private partnerships, have been identified as important provisions to enable vulnerable population to access health services. If healthcare in Uganda was inadequate, why actually for all the government officials, if they are seriously ill, they are actually flown out to receive good healthcare, even in other parts of the world, outside Africa. So let us look at the development of life expectancy. Life expectancy birth was established to be 3.4 years infant mortality rate was approximately 61 deaths per 1,000 children in 2012. In July 2012, there was an Ebola outbreak in the Kibale district of the country. On 4th of October 2012, the Ministry of Health officially declared the end of the outbreak after at least 16 people died. The Health Ministry announced on the 16th of August 2012 that 3 people had died in northern Uganda from suspected outbreak of Congo, Crimean hemorrhagic fever. I'm not so sure about the statistics. A lot more people died before like Uganda. Uganda has been among the rare HIV success stories. Infection rate of 30% of the population in the 1980s fell to 64% by the end of 2008. Meanwhile, the practice of abstinence was found to have increased. Less than half of all sexually active and married women use a modern contraceptive method, a fraction that has barely changed from practice, a fraction that changed from 2000 to 2011. However, only 26% of married women use contraceptives in 2011. The use of contraceptives also differs substantially between poor 15% and wealthy women 40%. As a result, Ugandan women have 6 children while they prefer to have around 4. According to the 2011 Ugandan Demographic and Health Survey, DHS, more than 40% of births are unplanned. In 2010, Ugandan Ministry of Health estimated that unsafe abortion accounted for 8% of country's maternal death. The 2006 Uganda Demographic Health Survey UDHS indicated that roughly 6,000 women die each year from pregnancy-related complications. Pilot studies in 2012 by Future and 16 have shown that this rate could be significantly reduced by implementing a budget scheme for health services and transport clinics. The prevalence of female genital mutilation FGM is low, according to 2016 UNICEF report. Only 1% of women in Uganda FGM is practicing illegal. Look at crime and law enforcement. In Uganda, the Allied Democratic Forces is considered a violent rebel force that opposes the Ugandan government. People's Defense Force are considered an alliance of Al-Shabaab. Let's look at tourism in Uganda. Rwenzori Mountains in Uganda, Forest Landscape Integrity Index 2009 map of Uganda. Forest condition measured by degree of anthropogenic modification, 0 equal modification, 10 equal least. Created in Google Earth engine, national boundaries called LSIB 2017 national boundary U.S. officer. Tourism in Uganda is focused on Uganda's landscape and wildlife. It is a major driver of employment, investment, and foreign exchange, contributing to 4.9 trillion Ugandan shillings, US dollar 1.88 billion or 1.4 billion euro as August 2013 Uganda GDP in financial year 2012. Uganda Tourism Board is responsible for maintaining information pertaining to tourism in Uganda. The main attraction are photo safaris through the national park and game reserves. Other attractions include mountain gorillas found in the Impenetrable National Park, Bay, and Mahinga Gorilla National Park, MGMP. Uganda are having some of the oldest cultural kingdom in Africa, has many cultural sites. Uganda is a birding paradise boasting a massive bird list of more than 1,073 recorded bird species, ranking 4th in Africa bird species and 16th internationally. That is impressive. Like I said in the other videos, I pointed out that Uganda actually is within the equatorial belt, which means actually the most conducive environmental corridor, supporting a wide variety of species, including human wildlife as well. On Uganda as a landscape ranging from wide Kaufing Rwenzori Mountain to the Great Rift Valley. So you can visit Uganda. It was described previously by Winston Churchill. So Winston Churchill, former foreign minister and later Prime Minister of Britain, he renamed Uganda as the Pearl of Africa, which means it's the best of the best. Look at science and technology in Uganda. The National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy dates from 2009. Its overarching goal is to strengthen national capacity to generate, transform, and apply scientific knowledge and skills and technologies that ensure sustainable utilization of natural resources for the realization of Uganda's development objectives. The policy proceed Uganda Vision 2040, which was launched in 2014 to transform Uganda society from a present modern and prosperous country within 30 years. World cabinet technology is extremely essential in human progress, and it's glad that Uganda, but it doesn't detract from my concern of the inequalities it's produced by capitalism, in which case you don't have to visit our cultural content and learn how to build good character, becoming a better human being, valuing humanity. We fail to do that sooner rather than later. And we are going to weaponize technology to be one of the worst lethal weapons ever created by humanity. And it is singularly going to be responsible for the extinction of humanity. And this is a peace issue. It's a peace information we need to take it very seriously. The Uganda Vision 2040 vows to strengthen the private sector, improve education and training, modernize infrastructure and underdeveloped services in agricultural sectors, foster industrialization and promote good governance. Potential areas of economic development include oil and gas, tourism, minerals, information and communication technologies, ICTs. Uganda was ranked 119 in the Global Innovation Index in 2021, down from 102nd in 2020. Research funding climbed between 2008 and 2010 at 0.33%, 0.4% of GDP. Over the same period, the number of researchers doubled in head counts from 1,387 to 2,883, according to the UNESCO Institute of Statistics. This represents a leap from 44 to 83% researchers per million inhabitants over the same period, 1 in 4 researchers in 4 months. Uganda has been able to manufacture a prototype of cars called Kira, in which the government invested $70 US. I think probably 70 million or something, whatever. Look at demographics in Uganda. Population deficit in Uganda. District. Uganda's population grew from 9.5% people in 1969 to 34.9 million in 2014. With respect to the latest essential period, September 2020, population increased by 10.6 million people in 12 years. Uganda's median age of 15 years is the lowest in the world. Uganda has the 5th highest total fertility rate in the world and 597 children born per woman. 2014 estimates. There were about 80,000 Indians in Uganda before Idi Amin required the expansion of Uganda Asian, mostly of Indian origin in 1972, which reduced the population to as low as 7,000. Many Indians, however, returned to Uganda after Amin's ouster in 1979. Around 90% of Ugandan Indians reside in Kampala. Most come from neighboring countries in the African Great Lakes region, particularly South Sudan, 68%, and Democratic Republic of Congo, 24.6%. In August 2021, Uganda received some refugees from Afghanistan following the Taliban takeover. Looking at languages of Uganda, and its linguistic map of Uganda, Swahili, a widely used language throughout the African Great Lakes region, was approved as the country's second official national language in 2005. English was the only official language until the Constitution was amended in 2005 Although Swahili has not been favored by the Bantu-speaking population of the South and the Southwest country, it is an important lingua franca in the northern regions. It is also widely used in the police and the military forces, which may be a historical result of disproportionate representation, recruitment of northerners into the security forces during the colonial period. The status of Swahili as thus in